It was just before sunrise, while it was still dark, as the three women made their way to the tomb. You see, Jesus had been crucified on Friday, just before the Sabbath had begun, and they hadn't been allowed by Jewish law to properly prepare his body for burial. So on this morning, as the Sabbath was ending, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and a third woman made their way to the tomb to anoint the body of their Lord. Imagine the sorrow that must have filled their hearts. Their Lord, the one they had believed was the Messiah, had just died. And along with him, all their hopes and dreams had died as well. It wasn't just dark on the outside, it was dark in their hearts. But in their darkest moment, the greatest miracle was getting ready to take place. It says that when they arrived at the tomb, the large stone that had been blocking the entrance had been rolled away. The guards were gone, and the tomb was empty. Now the women were confused, even fearful. The body of Christ wasn't there. They weren't sure what had happened to him. All they knew is he wasn't there. So they ran to get the disciples, all but Mary Magdalene. In shock and in disbelief, she stayed at the tomb, weeping, trying to figure out everything that happened. She approached the tomb, and in John chapter 20, it says she bent over and looked in the tomb. She saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. And they asked her, "Why are you crying?" She said, they've taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they've put him. She turned around and saw someone standing there. She didn't know who it was. "Woman," he said, "why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for?" Now Mary thought that it was the gardener, and she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I'll go get him." But it wasn't the gardener, it was Jesus. And he called her by name, "Mary." And she turned towards him and cried out, "Rabbi." She took off running to find the disciples, and she shared with them the good news. "I have seen the Lord. He's alive." Now, when Mary told the disciples what she had seen, imagine what they must have been thinking. The disciples must have sprinted the whole way back to the tomb that morning. They had to see it for themselves. Why? Because the disciples knew that a resurrected Jesus changed everything. This is the story of Easter. This is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And if you're like most people, you've heard the Easter story before. You may have even seen the movie. But you have to ask yourself, how does something that happened over 2,000 years ago impact my life today? I mean, what does the story of Jesus, who died and rose from the grave, have to do with me? Well, the very message of Easter is a message of new life and new hope that you and I can have in our lives today. The message of Jesus is that he came to make all things new. He came to give us a new way to God. No longer was it through keeping the law. No longer was it through temple sacrifices. He became that final sacrifice. He came to make our relationship with God new and whole again. He came to give us new hope and new life, to bring hope into the places in our life that feel hopeless and lost, to bring life to the things that seem dead. Before Jesus was taken and crucified, he predicted his death and his resurrection many times in scriptures. One place it was recorded is in the Gospel of John, John 12, 23 and 24, where Jesus says, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls in the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." Jesus was giving us a very clear illustration of his death and his resurrection. Unless he was buried in the ground like this seed, there would be no new life for you and me. Unless he surrendered his life, you and I would not know life today. I'm not a farmer or a gardener, but I know unless this seed is planted in the ground and it dies, it can never become all that it's supposed to be. It has to be planted, covered up with dirt, buried in the ground for weeks, sometimes months, and then finally, a sprout works its way through the ground, and new life begins. Life that produces a great harvest produces new life. You know, Jesus wasn't the first man to be resurrected in the Bible. In John chapter 11, one of Jesus' dearest friends, Lazarus, had died. Now, Jesus had spent much time during his years of ministry at the home of Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha. He loved this family very much. And when Jesus shows up at the home of Lazarus, he has been dead for 4 days. Mary and Martha are in mourning. It was their darkest hour. Their brother, the protector, provider, was dead. And in verse 25, Jesus says to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he is dead, yet shall he live again. And he has them remove the stone from in front of the tomb, and he says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus comes walking out of the tomb that day, wrapped up in his grave clothes. And the truth is, some of us today know there are places in our life that feel dead and hopeless. Maybe we've already even grieved the loss. But I want you to know that Jesus can speak life into any area that we bring before him today. That's what the resurrection of Jesus Christ means for you and me. We can have new life, and we can walk in the resurrection power of Jesus. His resurrected life makes our life new and resurrected. And it's a life that's in relationship with Christ, a relationship that is full of purpose and hope. He truly can make beautiful things in all of us, no matter how hopeless or dark it may feel. Remember that early morning as the women were headed to the tomb. It was their darkest moment. And at your darkest moment, that's when Christ can work his greatest miracle in your life.